All right, Andy, go.
Yeah, it says live on top, so we should be live.
Okay, all right, perfect, done. All right, we are here. Everybody knows today's awesome guest, my my longtime buddy at Run It Once is Alex Theologis, and there is a sort of a special reason why we decided to have Alex on today. Alex has put together his latest course, and we just released it on Run It Once, and so today our hope is to talk to you guys a little bit about the course, introduce it, get the reasons behind it. What you hope, what he would hope you can achieve by participating in the course, and have answer a bunch of questions that came in over the last few days from folks that either purchased it or are considering purchasing it. Alex, thanks for joining
Yes.
us.
Hello, Mikey. Thank you very much for having me. And yes, indeed, I just released the new ICM course, Practical ICM Mastery, and I'm very excited about it. I worked super hard on this course. I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible without too much filler or unnecessary stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited.
So I think I want to start with two things. The first thing I want to start with is why you decided to put this course together. What was your motivation? What was the impetus? What led you to? There's a lot of topics in MTT that you could have gone to. You could have done a some sort of omnibus comprehensive course, but you decided on this topic, and I want to know why.
There's a very bunch of reasons. So first of all, is that I've been noticing big ICM mistakes at every stake, even at the super high stakes. People have been making really big blunders. And of course, I make mistakes as well. Everyone does, but I've been noticing it a lot. And ICM is one of these things where everyone kind of knows what it's about. They kind of know like the basic rules of it, but they don't truly understand it in depth. So given how important it is for our win rate to be good at ICM when we play tournaments, I thought it's a very good topic to choose and dive deeply into it. Another reason is that it's also a topic that I think I'm fairly well studied on. I've been spending most of my studying time studying ICM in the past couple of years. So it's also a topic I feel comfortable producing. Kind of like in the bounty course, I was confident to talk about bounties. It's a similar case here. I wouldn't want to make a course on a topic where I don't feel that confident in. So I would say these are the two
So
main reasons.
yeah, and you touched on it right there, but my second question is, I want to define ICM as sort of the next step in
Hmm.
this, because like you just said, everybody. I shouldn't say everybody. Most people that play tournaments, with any sort of, religiosity or play them often enough,
Hmm.
will know at least have some notion of ICM, even if they don't know that it's called ICM. So I want you to define what ICM is, and and then we'll go into more detail.
Yeah. So basically, as the tournament progresses, the value of the chips change. Therefore, chips you lose tend to be more expensive than chips you gain. So you have an extra premium, which we call risk premium, on your chips, meaning that you need some more equity than normally in order to invest those chips in the pot. This is the rough explanation for it. But also, honestly, it doesn't really matter to get that much more in depth in the theory because it's all about being able to apply it while we play. For example, I think I've said it before, but when you get into a plane and want to go somewhere, you don't care how the engine works, you just want to get to your destination. So I think it's somewhat similar here. It's not so much about understanding the deep theory behind, oh, why, how much, and so on. It's understanding how to apply it and what parameters we should consider in order to get better at it.
I
So
think,
yeah.
yeah, I think for the people that are, I wouldn't say new to it, but new to the idea of ICM, we can, the simplest way to understand would be a quick comparison to a cash game, where every decision is has the same value, in terms of your in terms of you trying to maximize your chips in a cash game. You're just taking the action that yields you the highest number of chips. But tournaments are a different animal, and you already brought it up, where the value of chips that you lose might not equate to the value of chips that you win in a given situation.
Exactly.
And so, to illustrate this, if, there's 3 people left in a tournament and they have 1,000 chips, the other player has 1,000 chips, and you have 10 chips. And, one player goes all in against the other, you should fold essentially 100% of your hands.
Exactly, because getting this pay jump is the best case scenario for you. So yeah, this is a very good
Right,
example.
and so you're essentially guaranteed that. Obviously, that's an absurd example, but it illustrates the point that even if you're dealt aces in that situation, it doesn't make sense to call it off. Because
Yeah, exactly. It's because of the payout structure where in tournaments, not the first place winner doesn't get the entire prize pool, right? They only get a portion of it. So this creates this whole dynamic of trying to make the pay jumps and protecting your tournament life in a way.
Sure, and like the best way to go about that is sometimes counterintuitive, and that's where ICM comes in. How much you said you don't get into theory, or it's not, maybe you don't not get into it, but it's not as important of a concept. How much are you thinking? Well, first, how much of this do you cover in the course? But how much are you thinking in a tournament? The value of chips that you lose to an individual player. Like, if you lose it to, if I'm in the World Series of Poker and I have an unknown and I lose chips to, some small amount of chips to him or some small amount of chips to Isaac Haxton or something, I would prefer that they go to the unknown.
Right. Okay, so first of all, to answer the question about theory, of course, we do address it and we do discuss it, but I don't dive into huge detail about it because there are infinite books out there, like hundreds of pages deep, which explain the ICM concept and how it's applied and how to calculate and so on. And I really don't think this is actually needed for the games we play. Now, as for your other question about who to lose chips to, I do talk about that, but more so in terms of stacks. Like you would prefer to lose money to, let's say, the bigger stack instead of the other short stack. And
sure,
I address it in that way, not in a player-specific way. Like, I prefer to lose money to like the bad player instead of the good player.
This reminds me of a concept in cash games where, this was a long time ago, and maybe it's irrelevant, but I want to bring it up anyway. Talking to some people, and they were deciding whether to run it once or run it twice in a given situation, and they would,
Right.
often toggle whether they want to do it based on the opponent, because you would not want to chop against a fish. You want to either extract all of it or or give him the stack, because you're going to end up presumably getting it back in the long run anyway. So you're less willing to run it twice, 4 times, as you would be against, somebody that's good, I suppose.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know why that occurred to me, but I just wanted to.
No.
So we have a bunch of questions. So we introduced a little bit, but we had a bunch that were submitted to us over the last few days, and some coming in now from YouTube. So I want to make sure we try to hit everybody's questions, and then if there's anything that you think we should revisit, we can certainly do that. So
Of course, I'm glad to hear.
Okay. So, and then I'll give credit where there's usernames involved, but if they don't, sometimes it's anonymous. So. Hi, Alex. I already consider myself or consider ICM to be my strong suit, but it's difficult to learn post-flop mechanics. Any advice? I might buy the course mostly for the post-flop section.
Yeah. So, as you probably already know, a big portion of the course about 9 hours, I think, or so, 8, 9 hours, is dedicated to post-flop ICM, where we look at different scenarios, but focus on getting like the main concepts and the main takeaways so that we can apply them in other scenarios we face while we play. And so I think your point is true. Post-flop ICM is a very unexplored topic and has many intricacies, but I do think I explore it and talk about it to a reasonably high level, and I think you will gain quite a bit from it. And also another note about preflop is that you say it is your strong point, and I'm in no way doubting that, but there are so many, I guess, hidden things in ICM and also FGS to consider and so on, where maybe I'm hoping you can get something from the post-flop, from the preflop department as well. But yeah, I do talk about post-flop a lot, and once again, my focus is the main takeaways and not going into, oh, what should we bluff catch on the river in this very weird situation? That's not the point.
Great. Another anonymous. How do we adapt in a low average buy-in final table where some players aren't ICM aware and broke the natural dynamics? I am among, in this given situation, I'm among the shortest, like 8th or 9th, between 18 and 8 big blinds. Do we just wait, sometimes get blinded off and blame the gods of poker, or we gamble with jams and rejams like we would do in chip EV? I really like this question. I think a lot of people are probably experiencing something like this.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about ICM is that when someone makes a mistake, it doesn't benefit the direct opponent, it benefits everyone else as well. So for example, let's say we said that let's say a mid stack doesn't respect ICM, so then he's more likely to bust as a middling stack, giving you a higher chance to make a payout as the short stack. So in that case, you should lean more towards the tighter side, because his mistake of stacking off too wide will not benefit only the person that takes his stack, but will also benefit you, as he's more likely to get eliminated from the tournament. So depending on how people play, we should shift towards like the more aggressive or the more passive side. I do talk about this a bit in the course. I have some node lock situations where people either call too wide or raise too wide or raise too tight, and we look at what adjustments we can make against certain opponent profiles. But in the specific example that you mentioned, in the final table where people don't respect ICM, I would lean more towards the tighter side, because I would expect people to bust more frequently than they should, therefore gaining more page jumps myself. And an extra point to that would be that if we play, as you said, maybe more aggressive by jamming, and we do end up doubling up and tripling up, it will not matter as much, because we won't be able to apply a lot of pressure to our opponents if they don't respect ICM. If they don't fall to us when we're the big stack, then building this big stack doesn't have as much benefit as it otherwise would.
I think that's probably one of, not particularly about ICM, but just in general, one of the most common questions that I see people talking about generally, where they talk about using a solver, PO or GTO wizard or something like that, and they bring up, yes, it's good to understand this, but I play in a live poker game where, it goes limp, 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 raise, call, or something like that. And they bring up the idea that the solution isn't necessarily going to be relevant to their thing. And so if you're playing in a final table like this guy is, or, in the situation that he brings up, where everybody is, completely non-ICM aware or care about it. I think that's certainly something to consider, and I think you bring up a good point, that the best point that you've brought up is that it benefits, somebody's mistake benefits everybody, not just like one individual.
Exactly. Whereas in your example, where in the cash game where whoever makes the mistake benefits the player that takes their money, and that's it. The other players on the table, they don't really benefit from the mistake, whereas in ICM, that's different.
Yep. Okay. How many custom reports have you created, and what did you do to simplify the findings?
How many what?
Custom reports.
Custom reports. Okay. That's not what I heard. Okay. So I think we go over 5, 6 Excel sheets. And I've separated them by board type, and I try to separate them by board category. So first we look at, let's say, ace high boards, then king high boards, flush draw, monotone, and so on. But always my goal is to try and look for the main takeaways on each board type, and not super specific stuff like, oh, when it's the 7 of diamonds on the turn, then we do that. It doesn't really matter. We will never know exactly every single board, every single scenario. It's more about having a solid framework in our mind when we face similar scenarios. So yeah, we have quite a few reports in the course, but always the lens is how to simplify and how to identify similar patterns when we play.
Let's give a practical example here. Let's say you are 10 of 40 in a tourney that pays 32 spots. You have an opportunity to go up against someone who is 9 of 40 for what you think is close to a 50-50 flip. Mm-hmm. If you win, you will be chip leader and able to bully the bubble. Your thoughts on this opportunity?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I would say we should very hardly avoid taking a flip at this point, because by having a big stack ourselves against another big stack, our risk premium, so the extra equity we need to stack off, is going to be pretty high. How high depends on the payout structure, how big is the min cash, and so on. But we should need like at least, let's say, 15% more equity than we normally would. So taking a 50% flip when we need 65% equity is going to be a pretty big disaster, which is not easy to justify for having a big stack on the bubble. Now, we should start taking these things into account more when it's a smaller kind of bubble. So for example, let's say if it was 10 players left with 9 players paid. There, building a big stack will allow us to bully the table more, especially because it's a bubble that is likely to last very long. Whereas a bubble with 40 players or 30, 32, 34, whatever it is, I don't remember the exact number, is likely to last less. And also, our stack is already pretty big, so we can still have a decent win rate with our stack size. So I would avoid it.
In your own games, how often are you, how should I phrase it? How often are you running the numbers on a decision of this nature, or are you at a point where it's sort of intuitive for you to be able to understand?
You mean after we, like, how many hands I tag and analyze after my session?
No, during, like, you know, let's say that situation that I just described where you are
I see
40 and 9 of 40, are you like actively doing calculations in this situation, or are you kind of intuiting your way through it at this point?
So the way I do it is I try to guesstimate my risk premium level. Of course, I will not always get it right, but let's say I'm going to be like, I have 13 to 16% risk premium, somewhat in that range. And then I have, based on the risk premium and the stack sizes, I roughly know what my strategy is supposed to look like in that spot. So I don't go into super deep detail while I play, but through practicing and through solving a lot of hands and seeing a lot of examples, I know that, okay, with 40 big blinds and like 15% risk premium, I need, let's say, queens plus ace king to stack off. Of course, the positions and so on depend as well, but just as an example of how my thought process looks like. So I've always tried to combine my strategies with the risk premium level.
Yep. All right, another practical example from Twitter. How do you assess the risk premium near the bubble in the Venom?
Right. Oh, this is an interesting one. So the Venom, I mean, it has different forms right now, and the previous one was a mystery bounty. Before it was a PKO, before it was a freeze out. So it really depends which format we are talking about, because they're very different. The vanilla, the normal version, is the one which would have the highest risk premium. It depends a lot on the min cash. I recall it was on the smaller side. I don't remember exactly how much, but basically the smaller the min cash, the lower our risk premium should be. On the other hand, on these very big field bubbles, we tend to have a high risk premium because making the money is very important, given that there are very few pay jumps afterwards. As an example, if the bubble was at, let's say, 11 people paid, then we would have a lower risk premium because we have the upcoming pay jumps to worry about. But okay, so to summarize, In the vanilla version, depending on our stack size, if we have, let's say, an about average stack, I would say about 15% risk premium. In the bounty, it would be generally lower, let's say maybe 10% or so, again, assuming we have a stack around the average. And the mystery bounty is the tougher one to talk about because it is still unsolved how the upcoming bounty really affects our risk premium. But I would consider it significantly lower than that of the vanilla version because taking a risk and building a big stack means that we will cover way more people when we make the money and can fight for the bounties. So yeah, I would rank it highest risk premium would be the vanilla version. And then PKO and mystery bounty, I would put them about the same.
How difficult do you think, not do you think, but how difficult is it as you get some of these elements to a tournament, like, of course, a regular PKO has, its own stuff, but, like you just mentioned, in a mystery bounty where, let's say we're in the money, 20 people remaining, and, I'll give you two separate situations. One is all 20 players have 1,000 chips remaining. The other situation is 10 players have 1990 chips remaining and 10 players have 10 chips remaining. And it's a mystery bounty situation. So presumably, the likelihood, and if you're one of those 1990 stacks, presumably you have, a significant ability to win these 10 mystery bounties as opposed to everybody being even stacked. So how does that complicate your approach when, talking about ICM?
So this is, first of all, a bit tough to answer because it really depends on how much the mystery bounty is worth at that point.
Yeah.
But generally, mystery bounties do tend to be a bit of a clown fest, so you're probably supposed to go all in with any two cards in both situations. But yeah, so mystery
I like
bounties
that's the takeaway.
But one thing that I think should be said is that this ICM course is only about vanilla tournaments. About bounty ICM, I talk in the bounty specific course. This one is only about vanilla ICM and not PKO or mystery bounty ICM. So just to,
I suspect there's applications to.
Of course there is.
Yeah.
But I do think it should be said.
Yeah, and the video on mystery bounty ICM is 10 seconds. It's shove any two. Next video.
Yes, exactly. That's it. You pay for the course, and what I'm saying is just go all in.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Who is this course made for? Can you describe the ideal player profile that will benefit the most from this course?
So I think it's easier to say who it is not made for. I think someone who is a complete beginner in tournaments will probably have a bit of a harder time following through with everything. But as long as you're not a complete beginner, I think you will benefit from it no matter if you're, let's say, a semi-pro playing mid stakes or even playing high stakes. Because I talk about some of the more basic concepts, but I also talk about very in-depth stuff. Whether that is talking about exploits and talking about different payout structures and field sizes, or also about the post-flop ICM, which is still pretty new and not a lot of people have studied it. So I think it's for pretty much everyone, except the very beginners who will have a bit of a rougher time following the sims and some of the terminology and so on. It's not like a pro-only course for sure, because I do talk about more basic concepts and explain them and so on, but I don't think it's for the total beginner.
Sure. I think we have better places to start on Run It Once if you're a complete newcomer to get you up to speed. Okay, Canon in Love 460 says, "Hi, Alex. I'm from Vietnam. I've watched a number of your videos on GG Millions. The way you play online poker is very impressive. I'm interested in your course. I'd like to ask a question for Alex, who first off is looking great. Has he lost weight? How does he view the current state of MTTs, for example, profitability-wise as a career, perhaps in comparison to recent years or in comparison to cash games?"
Yeah, very, very interesting question. First of all, thank you for your nice words. Now, About the profitability, it is, I think, without a doubt, that the average player today is much better than even the average player was, say, 5 years or 10 years ago. The software is way more accessible. It's much easier to study, be it through GTO Wizard or whatever other application. So I do think the average player is much better. But also, the average professional is also way better than they were a few years ago. And field sizes are becoming pretty big. There's this newer kind of boom, both for online and for live poker. So what I will say is I still think tournaments can be very profitable. You have a nice mix of recreational showing up at most stakes. And even though the average recreational will not be completely clueless, there is still a lot of room for profitability as long as you are willing to put in the work required to be a step ahead of the average player.
Sure. I think, this is, maybe this is kind of a dumb question, but, and I'm not asking you to distill your entire course down to one soundbite, but can you give us, what's the, maybe not the one thing or main thing, but what's something that people are getting wrong most often when it comes to ICM nowadays?
Mm-hmm.
Give us from the perspective of, the amateur player and the professional player.
Mm-hmm. There are so many things. So one thing that people get right is that they roughly know, oh, now I'm the big stack, I should be very wide here and apply pressure. Now I'm the short stack, I should be tight here. But not every scenario boils down to just that. It really depends on a lot of other factors. And I think identifying these other factors is where people struggle. So understanding, for example, how big a min cash is, what the payout structure looks like on a final table, taking into consideration the other stack sizes and future game and all these kind of nuisances, I think this is where people struggle. And I see it a lot in high stakes as well, because some of the high stakes tournaments are now with the cards up, so you can see what people fold and what people raise and so on. And I notice a lot of mistakes that have to do with these misunderstandings. Like you see the big stack being way too wide in a spot where he really shouldn't be. You see the short stack being very tight in a spot where he can actually stack off very wide against that specific stack size he's up against. So yeah, I would say this is the number one thing that I see people make wrong pre-flop. And then for post-flop, the main thing would be that people tend to overestimate how much money they can put in with their one pair hand. So let's say they raise aces and then the board is king high and they end up going for 3 streets when in reality they should be checking back the river because the risk of running into, let's say, a 2 pair or a set is just too high and it's not worth the upside of getting called by worse. Just as a random example off the top of my head.
You mentioned the fact that there's a lot of factors that go into, of course, in your decision making. And I think in MTTs in particular, it's like, it seems like there's a never ending stream of things to be considering as opposed to, a cash game. If you're playing a PLO cash game, you can sit, look at your hand, make the best decision. But in the MTT, you're looking at the clock, you're considering the strength of your table, you're looking at the order in which the tables break, you're deciding, do I have a better chance of, folding here, having my table break and getting moved to a new table, or do I, what are the other stack sizes looking like? So it just seems like there's the potential. Of course, if you're able to synthesize all this data better than the next person, you're gonna have a leg up. But is there any consideration to information overload being an issue?
So your point is a good one, I think, but it's just the nature of ICM. It's a very complicated concept, and there are so many factors to consider when trying to make the best decision, where I think our best solution is to try to be good enough at considering every aspect, even if we sometimes end up making a mistake. So yes, sometimes you're gonna miscalculate a stack size or not take some payout structure into account very well, but this is all part of it. As long as we do our best and trying to absorb every factor available to us, that's how far we can reach.
Class War asks, also, do you see any downsides for an MTT Pro to only study ICM and only reg tournaments very late?
So it depends. First of all, one downside is that on GG Poker, for example, high stakes have a pre-registered chip bonus. So then sometimes max late registering is not going to be profitable, given that you gain less chips than people who played from before. And your ICM EV gain will not cover for that chip deficit. But other than that, I would say not really, just that you are likely to still play some deep stacked spots even when later against. Like you're gonna double up a few times and you're gonna have like 40 big blinds and there are gonna be other 40 big blind stacks. But besides these downsides, no, I do think ICM is one of the most important concepts. And a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but some people are doing what you're saying. They're only interested in max late registering and they never play a tournament from the start. Of course, this limits your ability to play PKOs because max late registering a bounty tournament is not going to be profitable. But other than that, no, not really.
Alex, I am an average winning low stakes MTT grinder. What do you think are the current mistakes that I make due to ICM that the course could help me fix? I understand that this is like, this is the whole point of the course. So this will give you a chance to elaborate what's in the course.
Yeah, it is tough to talk about you specifically because I don't really know your game and not everyone has the same ICM leaks. But in the course, what I do cover is I go through every stage of the tournament. We talk about early stages ICM, so let's say from when the tournament starts up until 50% of the field remaining. Then we talk about middle stages, so 50% field towards near the bubble. Then we talk about the bubble, then we talk about post-bubble until the final table. And then of course we talk a great deal about final table ICM. So we go through every stage and we look at many different scenarios. We look at how to play from the blinds and as the big stack, as the short stack, how to 3-bet, how to raise, and so on. So I cover every stage of the tournament, different stack sizes, different field sizes. So I think you will be able to identify yourself which area you lack because I talk about all of them. So as you're watching a video on a specific area, you're going to be able to tell, oh, this thing I didn't know about. Or, oh, this is interesting, like extra addition to what I already knew. Then, of course, there is all the post-flop stuff, which depending on how much you've studied it, you will know very little, or of course, maybe you've studied a lot, so then you know quite a bit. But I think that is also something that will help a lot with people. There is also the talk about exploits and some FGS. And also there is the cards up final table that we review with Jans Arends. And then you also get to have a perspective from someone that isn't me about how they perceive ICM and how they would react in certain spots.
You brought this up, and so I want to mention it. Hi, Alex. FGS is also a focus in the course, naturally, right?
Yes. So the FGS concept is not very easy to solve right now because our main solver for ICM, HRC, can only solve, let's say, 4 or 5 hands in the future by only considering all in or fold as actions. So we can solve FGS when we're talking short stacks. But when we're talking like 50 big blinds, 40, 30, and so on, it's not easy because it only considers all in or fold in the future hands. So what we do in the course is we look at some examples where we can actually solve for it and see what changes. And then we try to extrapolate logically about how we should adjust considering our future win rate. So yes, we do talk about FGS. To say that it is a focus, I don't know if it is the main focus, no, but there is a video dedicated to that where we look at scenes and also talk about it logically.
Along the same theme, another ICM course, what makes your course special and why should I choose it over some of the other options out there?
Because I'm special. No, no. So I am aware that there is a lot of ICM content out there. I was aware of that before deciding to make the course. But I also couldn't find an ICM course that was very in-depth and covered every area. So what I try to do with my course is portray it in the way that I study, which is go through every area while focusing on practical applications and not just memorizing charts and looking at random solutions. I'm not saying that this is what other people did. I'm just saying what my focus was. Then also I wanted to talk a lot about post-flop ICM, which to my knowledge, there is no course about out right now. Maybe I missed something, but I don't think there is. So I have everything in one place, in one course. It is about 30 hours of content, pre-flop, post-flop, and then exploits and everything in between. So in my opinion, this is the most elaborate ICM course out there, and it is also very new and up to date using the latest solvers and latest material that we have.
This is a question I actually like, and I want to hear the answer to. What are some of the key developments in how top players approach ICM over recent years compared to 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, so the first thing is we have much more developed solvers now, with HRC being able to solve for post-flop as well. Means that now we can study our pre-flop decisions much better because we can see which hands are profitable flats as opposed to 3-bets and whatnot. So I think, first of all, solver development allows us to have more accurate solutions. Then also we are now able to study post-flop ICM, which we couldn't really study much a few years ago. And also we have the option to study future game. As I said, it is still somewhat limited, but we do have this option. And that is also much more accessible than before. Let's say 10 years ago, if you wanted to study a spot, you would have to put it up on like Monker Solver, which would take 2 weeks to run a spot for you. Right now, you can get it done in like 30 minutes on HRC, or just open GTO Wizard and look at a similar situation, and there you have it. So yeah, I think we just have more accurate solvers that can give us better solutions, and just we can look at the same spots, but with more information available to us.
I like that. Will there be future updates to the course, or is there, does it already cover everything I need to know right now?
I like to believe that it does cover everything, but as with my bounty course, I do plan to release updates. This could be when something new comes out. Let's say in a few months, we can now solve for future game for bigger stack sizes. I will definitely update the course with that. Or based on feedback. Let's say people buy the course and they're like, oh, you haven't expanded very well on this topic. Then I can make a follow-up video and talk about it as well. Another thing, which also goes with one question that we have about adding any other hand history reviews. That is something that I plan to do. We plan to have more cards up final table reviews with some other guests. You mentioned a live tournament like a Triton. This is something we can very well do. So yes, I do plan to update it. Exactly how remains to be seen, whether it is new content from new solvers or content based on feedback, or just extra additions with live reviews.
Alex, I already own your other Run It Once course, Knockout Tournament Mastery. How do you think the two courses go hand in hand with each other? Is there a lot of overlap, reducing the value I might get if I already studied KTM?
I would say close to zero. I very purposefully dedicated this ICM course to just vanilla. I didn't want to have, as you said, overlap between the two courses or have any repeated material. So this ICM course is exclusively about vanilla tournaments. Of course, ICM concepts do carry over, stuff about like future game and stack sizes and payout structures, all of that does carry over from vanilla to bounty tournaments. But there is no overlap, it's not like the same hands, it's very different.
We have a handful of like what I would consider like really good questions. So I want to kind of rapid fire them at you. So I'm just gonna rip them and then you answer them as you see fit. But, here we go. At which point of the tournament should I start to consider ICM?
So the answer is ICM starts from the very first hand. When we raise the tournament, we actually have a bit of a risk premium. And especially if we start building up a stack, let's say we get to 3 starting stacks, even if we're in the second level of the tournament, we still have risk premium against other similar stacks. So I would say there's not a specific point in the tournament where we need to start caring about ICM. It's more so as we'll start building up our stack size. Of course, if we start approaching the bubble even with a short stack, but it's not, from this point onward.
Got it. How many hours of videos are there in your course?
About 30 hours.
Do I need additional software to get value from the course?
No, none at all. I show all of the sims myself and all the exploits and talk about it. So no, you do not. Of course, if you want to run spots yourself, then you would need the software, but no, it is definitely not a requirement. You can get the full experience without any software yourself.
Do you have to have some idea about solvers beforehand or have any sort of fluency with solvers, or is that not necessary?
I think the interface of the solvers used is pretty straightforward. You can clearly see which hands are like free betting and which hands are jamming. So I don't think so, no. It would help, but I don't think it's necessary. I think everything shown is fairly straightforward and easy to understand. So no, I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite.
What do I get access to when I purchase the course? Is it videos? I like learning from high quality videos, but sometimes I feel it can be tough to motivate myself to watch video after video. Do you think I will struggle going through the course? I have an answer to this as well that I'll follow up to yours with.
Okay, so what I will say is that it is mainly videos. It is, as I said, about 30 hours of video content, but the videos are much more, well, most of the videos are much more practical and not just theory. So we look at hand examples and then we try to come up with the best strategy in that specific scenario and then look at how we can exploit certain opponents. There is also an ICM quiz, which is a bit more fun and interactive, I guess, where you look at spots and try to guess the answer to some questions and then we go over them. But it is mainly going to be videos, so there's no way around it. But I think it's not going to be your typical boring theory video where someone is like reciting a poem and you have to remember it tomorrow. I don't think it's like that.
That was going to be kind of what I said, is that I've seen most in some format, probably prior to the editing stages, but I've seen some of these videos in all different forms, and I would call them a fun watch, like an easy watch, as opposed to some of the more technical videos that have run as elite training videos on the site can sometimes get quite heavy and require at least 2 or 3 watches for you to get the concept down. I don't think that's necessarily the case, especially for the majority of the videos in this course. Some might get a little heavy and you might want to rewatch them, but more often than not, I think you should be able to work your way through these videos at a pretty good clip. Is the course also applicable to live players? Does it cover the nuances between the different limits and how people play there?
Yes, ICM applies to live poker just as online poker, and there is a specific chapter dedicated to comparing live versus online, where we talk about how the big blind ante affects things, both when it comes to FGS, but also when it comes to playing shorthanded, where you have the full ante in the middle, and also how the live payout structure can also affect ICM. So most of the course is more about online tournaments, but the same concepts apply to live, and there is a dedicated chapter comparing the two and talking about the differences. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry, it was about.
Does it cover the nuances? You answered it. Does it cover the nuances between the different limits and how people play there?
Yeah, well, we look into how to exploit people with different profiles. So then it ultimately comes down to you to identify which profile your opponents fit into. So I cannot say myself exactly how someone would play at very low stakes because I don't have current experience playing there. But that is down to you to figure out what mistakes they're making. And in the course, I talk about how to exploit different mistakes.
I think, this is sort of just coming to me as we're talking, but I wouldn't necessarily get, if you are indeed someone that's playing routinely in $5 or $10 tournaments, I wouldn't get too bogged down in some of the specifics about, what's going on in this course. I think this course has a ton of important information, but I think the bulk of your opponents at these stakes are going to be making such dramatic errors that you tightening up your ICM game to make the right decision on a very small spot that isn't going to occur too frequently is far less important than simply just mastering pre-flop hand selection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I was going with that, but that's my thought on that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm a no limit cash pro, but I want to diversify and get more into MTTs. Do you think this course could be a good stepping stone for that?
For sure, yes. ICM is the main difference between cash games and tournaments, right? The fact that your chips don't cost the same all throughout, whereas in cash games they do. So if you're looking to transition, I think focusing on ICM, which is the main difference, is a very good way to start. Of course, you would also need to study different stack sizes because you don't play 100 big blinds deep all that often in tournaments. But that is, of course, for another course, not this one. But I do think studying ICM when you're trying to switch to tournaments is one of the main things you should be studying.
Alex, I've done a lot of studying with pre-flop ICM ranges in HRC, and I was hyped to see your new course covers post-flop ICM too. Can you tell me what I can expect from that section? Is it worth buying the course mainly just for that?
I would say yes. I think we had a similar question already, but I would say yes because it is a big portion of the course. It's not like 1 hour. It is, I think, like 8 or 9 hours where we talk about post-flop ICM. And we look at a few different scenarios. It's like big stack versus big stack, short stack versus big stack, all these kinds of things, in position, out of position, big blind, small blind. We look at a lot of different scenarios. And we try to come up with the key concepts that can be applied in game. So especially since it is not a topic that is easily available elsewhere, I do think it is one of the important, I guess, unique selling points of the course. So I think, I would say yes, given how big of a portion of the course it is, I think you can benefit from it. And also, what I said before is that even though you've studied a lot with pre-flop HRC, I still think there are probably some nuances here and there where you can also benefit, or even just getting in practice by trying to guess the answer in the scenarios that I show.
We have a few general questions that I want to hit, and then we'll come back to some of the course-specific ones. How much do you consciously deviate from the optimal ICM dictated play in your own average sessions because you know people don't play accordingly? Can you give a real example?
Yeah, I would say quite a bit. So the main thing is to try and have a good idea of the theory so that I know how to adjust from it. Because if I don't know what I'm adjusting from, it's really hard to adjust. But I would say a lot of my decisions do not try to reflect the solver, but it's me trying to come up with the correct deviations based on how I think my opponents are making errors. One example would be, we have situations where the chip leader is opening too wide, and then as the short stack, you get to jam extremely wide against him. So I would say this is one of the main exploits, where let's say the solver wants you to jam 15%, but then you can jam like 50%. So instead of 1-5, 5-0, if our opponent is opening like 10% too wide and is not calling wider. So yeah, there are a lot of nuances like that we go into.
What is your favorite series for online tournaments, and what is your favorite live stop?
Okay, favorite series, I think it still has to go to WCOOP. It's been there since forever, and even though PokerStars traffic is not as high as it used to be, it is still it has this special place in my heart, and I always enjoy when it's time to play WCOOP and Scoop as well, like these two PokerStars series.
Yeah.
As for live, I think Triton takes the crown. Undoubtedly, it is by far the best type of live stop that you can go to. Just everything is so smooth about the experience. I'm a big Triton fan.
I like this one. Where do you think the most amount of edge comes from in tournaments across all stages? Pre-flop or post-flop? Does that differ for low and high stakes?
I think pre-flop is the main one because ICM is going to be more about pre-flop than post-flop. Of course, we do play post-flop as well, but a lot of the ICM spots are more shallow stack sizes where you don't really play that many flats. So then mastering pre-flop and knowing what type of hands to 3-bet or to 4-bet or to jam or to raise and so on is going to be very crucial for our win rate. So, and even in a normal chip EV spot, because you said like even at every stage of the tournament, even in a normal chip EV spot, the core of your strategy is going to be your range. So having the correct pre-flop range will lead to you making better post-flop decisions. So I would say in whichever stage, pre-flop is going to be the first step to a more successful post-flop.
At which buy-in level do you think the course is a valuable investment?
I would say most of them. If you're playing micro stakes, then maybe the investment is a bit too steep for the stakes you are playing. But I would say everywhere from like low stakes up the way to very high stakes, you can benefit from the course. So it depends a bit on your bankroll. Like if you're playing, let's say, $1 tournaments, then probably investing 800, which is now, is going to be a bit steep for your bankroll. But that's not to say you will not benefit from it, just that maybe the cost isn't there based on your average buy-in. So yeah, I don't think it has a specific buy-in or skill level. I think it covers everything and is for everyone.
Some of these we've kind of touched on already, but they're, let's just hit them again anyway. Will the course start from the very beginning, or will I require any prior knowledge to be able to take the course?
No, I think it starts from the very beginning. We explain what ICM is and what risk premium is, and we look at all kinds of different scenarios. So no, I don't think you need to have any specific knowledge. But as I already said, I think if you're a complete beginner to tournaments, then maybe it will be a bit too advanced. It is not for advanced players only. It's not like for pros only. Just if you started playing last week, then there's probably better places to start than this course.
What do you recommend for somebody that is quite literally just getting started playing tournaments? I have my own thoughts, but I wonder what you think.
I think there is a lot of good material on Run It Once already. I think there is this course from the ground up, right? That is very beginner friendly and covers these fundamentals.
That's what that course is for, people that are in that situation, I would say.
Yeah. And then even beyond that, I think there is a lot of free content out there, be it on YouTube or other just random poker training sites or forums or whatever. So I think there is a lot of content out there, both on Run It Once, but everywhere else as well. There is a lot of content.
I don't know about you, but I think that it's very difficult to do any better than actually just playing in tournaments for real money, because it's just difficult to replicate the decisions when money is on the line, and it's difficult to, same with anything. You're not going to get better at tennis doing drills all day. You're going to get better if you're playing matches, and if you're, same goes for basketball. You can go and shoot all the time, but you still got to play games.
Yeah, see, that is interesting because I do get your perspective, but what I did, and I recommend others doing as well, is when I decided to become a professional playing tournaments, then for like 3-4 months, I completely stopped playing and I only studied because I wanted to understand like the fundamentals of the game and the core theory concepts and just like the math behind it and so on. So after that, then I was splitting playing and studying, but I did take a 3-4 month break where I only studied before getting into it. So,
but when you did that, you were already at a level of, obviously you weren't.
No. I had completely no idea.
You were already at a decent level.
No. I was only playing poker for like a week or 2 weeks, and I decided that, okay, I want to look into this more seriously, and then just stop playing, study, understand the math and the theory concepts and so on, and then start playing again.
I'm impressed. I don't know that, I don't know that I would have been able to do it that way.
It really depends on the person, but it is what has been, what has worked for me and what I thought is a good decision.
Yeah, I need to, bash my head into the wall 100 times, before I learn not to do it, I suppose. Okay, a few more. What buy-in level can I beat after going through the course? I'm currently playing average buy-in of $20 and I want to move up.
So I think the course will definitely help you move up, as it will increase your win rate when making final tables and generally ICM-based decisions. Now, I cannot say that, oh, after you study the course, you can now go play average buying 100. It doesn't really work like that. It will make you a better player, which will in turn increase your profitability, and then you will be able to move higher and higher, both based on your bigger bankroll and on your higher edge against your opponents. So I don't think it's right for me to put out a number, but I will say that it will definitely improve your game and increase your win rate if you go through the course.
I'm curious how you balance studying and playing throughout the year on a weekly basis to ensure that you stay sharp and continue improving. How does that differ from what you would recommend for someone currently playing low stakes tournaments? We kind of just talked about this, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think there are diminishing returns when it comes to studying, where the higher level you are, the fewer things you have to actually improve on. And these things will be more details, like minor things as well. But for me personally, it really depends on the period. So during the online series months, so let's say September and May and like January, these are the months where I just play almost every day and don't really study. Then you have the livestock months, which is also much more playing heavy. Let's say you have WSOP and you have the Tritons. And then the rest of the year, these are the months where I focus more on studying and creating content. So for me, it goes more in periods. So there's the heavy study period, the heavy play period, and so on. Now, I would say depending on your specific level, it might make more sense to, instead of splitting it into periods, just have a more steady routine where you just study X amount of hours and play Y amount of hours per week. Yeah, it just really depends on the individual, and what I'm doing might not be right for everyone else.
Okay, a couple more. I've often heard that poker is getting tougher every day and that it's not worth getting into anymore if you're not already good. How do you see just getting started in poker, and is it still a worthwhile endeavor?
Yeah, this is a good question, which is tough to answer. I do think poker can still be very profitable, both tournaments and cash games. But I also think it is tougher to get very good at it than it was some years ago. I already mentioned how the average person is way better today than they were 10, 15, whatever amount of years ago. So I think it is tougher, but it is certainly still viable. However, there are other ways where you can make money online nowadays, which didn't exist in the past. So I don't think there's a very clear answer. I am not going to be the person saying, oh yeah, of course, everyone should come and play poker. You can get rich quick. I don't think it's like that. I think it is tough, definitely doable and viable, but not as easy as it used to be.
All right, I want to make sure we hit everybody's questions. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what do you personally enjoy more, playing live or grinding online?
If you asked me like 3, 4 years ago, I would have said 100% online. Now I'm very torn. I really don't know. It's very close for me. I think I prefer a mix of both. It's hard to say. For example, this series in September, I am going to go to Triton. So I will skip 2 weeks of online grind to go and play live. So, that is an answer in and of itself.
You live in Greece, right? So I think that
No,
you can,
I am from Greece. I live in Vienna.
Vienna. Okay, so I'm looking at I have this big mural on my wall that's like a map. So not too far apart in
Mm-hmm.
terms of my larger point, which is you're pretty centrally located, so it's probably somewhat easy for you to get to a number of different destinations. Aside from maybe like LA or something, or Vegas, that's probably a haul, but.
Mm-hmm.
You're pretty centrally located and have the ability to get to a lot of different stops, I would say, in a relatively short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on one hand, true, but on the other hand, some of the main ones are very far away. Like you have Vegas in the summer, you have Bahamas
Yeah.
in December, you have Triton in Korea 2 times a year, which are very long flights, all of them. So
Yeah.
yes and no.
Yeah. Okay. I guess like the EPT
Yeah,
type
yeah, the
ways.
European stops are much easier, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We want to wrap it up, and I want to make sure that we let everybody know about the bonus offerings that are going on if you purchase the course right now. Obviously, the course just launched. And so you, by purchasing now, you are getting a 20% off of the regular price. And I don't know how much longer that's going to be around. So we strongly encourage that if you're thinking about making the purchase for this course, we strongly recommend that you do so now. And then on top of that, Alex is going to be doing some seminars. The first one is going to be on September 25th. And so if you purchase the course, you will be able to attend these and participate. So we strongly recommend that you purchase now, get your discount, get access to the seminars. And Alex, I want to give you a chance, to tell us anything that we didn't cover about the course. And then we'll sign off.
No, I think we spoke about pretty much everything. I want to reiterate again that I worked very hard on it, and I tried to make it as easy to digest and easy to apply in game as possible. This was always like my number one focus. Like, how can we look at this sim? How can we look at this Excel? And how can we actually use it when we play? Because we will not have this exact spot in game. It's not like GPV where, you raise the button of 30 big blinds and you're going to have this spot 100 times a day. No, ICM is very different each time because it depends on, as we said, payouts, stack sizes, structures, blah, blah, blah. So I tried to have the key concepts and the practical takeaways always in focus. So with over 30 hours of content and going through everything, I really think it can increase pretty much every tournament player's win rate. And yeah, I'm always open to answering feedback or questions or whatever it may be.
Yep. That was great, Alex. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And
Thank you for having me.
I am sure we will be doing it. We will be doing it again very soon.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in and for your questions.
Okay. Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.